My guest for this episode of the Hero Up podcast says she sees the world best looking through the lens of a camera. Alannah Avelin is a true Renaissance woman. Her life's journey has been driven by an insatiable curiosity to learn and understand everything around her, especially people. Her diverse talents and passions have led her to wear many hats as a photographer, a house rehabber, a shop owner of a unique artisan store, an art gallery curator, a creative director, a coach, an advisor, and a mom. And while her roles have been varied, there are common threads that unify them all. She has always challenged conventional measures of success to embrace a more heartfelt approach to life. Most recently, she founded Mother Lover CEO, a project born out of her dedication to create experiences that allow others to feel seen, heard, nourished, and supported. These are the very things she's wished for herself. So stay tuned as we delve into the mind of an inspiring, joyful, powerful leader who stands for goodness, beauty, freedom, and the celebration of human potential. Hello, and welcome to Hero Up, the podcast that inspires and challenges you to step up and become heroic in all areas of your life. I'm your host, Tony Stark Polici, and it's my goal to give you practical, actionable advice and insights into copywriting, mindset, lifestyle, and impact. On this show, we'll explore how to create compelling and persuasive marketing messages, and I'll give you clever tips to make you stand out as a hero. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a freelancer, a coach, or a creative, this podcast is for you. So, let's dive in. All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Hero Up podcast. And you just heard the intro for my amazing friend here, Alannah. Alannah, you are really somebody close to my heart. I really appreciate you and have an awful lot of love and respect for you. I thank you so much for being here today. Appreciate
Absolutely.
it.
Happy to be here.
So I just want to start out with a real simple question. Tell me a little bit about who you are and, what your background is.
Oh my gosh, it's so loaded. I guess you've been on the planet enough years, and then that's a bigger question. I'm a mom. I have 3 grown boys, and I'm also an entrepreneur and a creative. I've been self-employed entrepreneur literally almost my entire working career. It's been an interesting arc between starting as a photographer and going through being a creative director, and then a coach and advisor, and then a strategist. And then I've also I love real estate because I love creating space. So I've done quite a bit of real estate rehab and investing. And now I have a brick and mortar that was kind of created right post-COVID as a means of having a beautiful, safe space for people to feel like they are safe and they're connected, like home. A portal of goodness and beauty. And then I'm also have just started another project called Mother Lover CEO, which is basically a culmination of the last 30 years of my life with all the trials and tribulations that come along with just being a human walking the planet. And I'm really excited about it. That's it.
You've got an extensive background, and because I know you and I know so much of your story, there's a tremendous amount of beauty and detail that went into that are behind that 2 minutes that you just gave us there. But let's talk about one of the things that I think I was first taken by when it comes to your talent is your photography.
Yeah.
Like, you have a very unique relationship with, let's call it the art of photography. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'd actually love to. It is definitely a relationship. And I'm very unconventional in the sense of my photography is more about the camera as a means for me to see and for people to be seen. And it started, though, as a way of getting into live music in bars underage, honestly, because I couldn't get in to see the live music. It was Portland during the time of grunge when all that was happening in Seattle. There was the Portland sound and the Seattle sound. I was 19.
These like the Nirvana days?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Pearl Jam, Nirvana, the whole thing. And it was an amazing, vibrant scene. And so I just got this idea that if I was a photographer, then I could get in the back door where no one cards you. And I could have these relationships with these bands. And I was really a huge fan. I'm just a music freak. And it worked. Like, it literally worked. However, I was a terrible photographer when it came to the mechanics of photography. My negatives were the worst. I underexposed or overexposed. there's something you can do called pushing the film if you need to be able to, it was film days. You need to be able to get more light, but I would push it to like 125,000, which you're not really supposed to do. So there's really nothing on my negatives. But as a result of that, I got to be really good at printing terrible negatives. And so I was very creative and artsy. And people are like, oh, I love that photograph. It's so artsy, right? It was just me fixing a mistake. And so it really was a defining moment for me because it was that part of me that's very rebellious and wanting to find a way out of no way. The metaphor of coming in the back door. I did a TEDx talk on that, actually. This whole idea of like everything's made up. All the rules are made up. If the front door is closed, go in the back door kind of thing. And it is those kinds of, that mindset has definitely been a huge part of my success throughout my life.
I love that. What a creative way to, it's amazing how oftentimes in life, our agenda to achieve something, to get something, your goal wasn't to become a photographer. It was to get into these clubs and meet these bands and see these bands. Yeah. And then something sprung out of that. I also love, because, my past as a professional actor, we had this saying in theater, if you can't fix it, feature it.
Yes.
Because, you're on live stage and things happen, right? So it sounds like that's what happened with your negatives. And totally. You were trying to fix something and people were like, oh, that's so artsy.
And another thing, so it's again, like I have a very fascinating life. I think a lot of us do, of these sort of tragic things that have happened at pivotal times in our life that sort of become the bridge or the side street to get us where we really are meant to be. And during that time, I just started doing that work, and kind of like bands were getting to find out who I was, and I was being, getting invited to be a photographer. And I got in a really serious car wreck on a bridge.
Ooh.
And I've always had this fear of flying off a bridge and drowning in water from as long as I can remember. And it just happened to be on this bridge, which I didn't know until that time. There's like the bridge kind of went up. And so what happened was there was a car stalled on the other side of this little bump in the bridge. It was like 2 a.m. I was going home and I rear-ended this like 69 Mustang that was stalled there. And I started spinning, and then I don't remember anything. So I was unconscious in the hospital for several days. So then I didn't have a car. I just quit my job to become a photographer. So I didn't have any insurance. And it was one day, my whole life changed. My best friend was no longer my best friend in a weird set of circumstances. But the most beautiful, amazing thing was a mile down the street, there was a lab called UDevelop. At the time, there was 2 in the country. And all of these incredibly well-known, very successful photographers would do their own printing there. And there was a guy named George, who is this Eastern European guy with a thick accent who taught us he would do all the color correcting for you. But the way they had set the lab up was that you could kind of make it your office. There's all these rooms you could work, and there's you could do slide, you could do what's called C41, you could do black and white. They had telephones, you could take calls. So it literally became a mile for me. I could just walk there or take the bus there. And I got addicted to printing. And it really informed my relationship with the aesthetic of my photography. And it gave me, I just didn't have any rules to follow. I didn't know any better. It was to this day, is one of my most formative experiences to be in a place in my life where I didn't know what the rules were. I totally made it up as it went along. I found out afterwards I was doing it wrong. But at that point, I had already created a relationship with that and actually gotten some attention for this aesthetic that I had. Or, I used to doing modeling. I did some stuff in the fashion industry at that time. And one of the agents at the directors at one of the modeling agencies had told me that my work reminded them of Gorman, which was like the most amazing compliment I could have gotten.
So who's Gorman? For those of us that don't know Gorman, who is Gorman?
He's a famous black and white photographer. He did a lot of, black and white, moody, sensual, sometimes sexual sort of, but it was very artsy. It was very
edgy,
unabashed. Is that the right word?
Unabashed.
Yeah. And just bold, rebellious, sexy work. And I'm kind of like that. That's kind of my gig. Everything I'm doing is a little bold and a little rebellious and hopefully a little bit sexy.
So people said your work reminded them of him. Yeah. And then what happened as a result of that?
I started getting a lot of work and I freaked out and I sold all my camera gear to my best friend's dad and quit doing photography for a while.
What was that about?
Deep-seated fear of being found out, that someone was going to realize I didn't know what I was doing. When I was doing it by myself in the lab and I was just creating my own stuff and giving photographs to bands who didn't really care, they just got something for free, right? But as soon as people wanted to pay me, as soon as they had an expectation of me, I was like, oh, they're going to find out. Crazy.
Yeah.
I did it twice in my life too. So it's just interesting. I have a very, very interesting relationship with photography. We could talk a lot about that. Maybe we will bring it up again later, but yeah.
Well, I was going to ask you if there was a defining moment in your career that, significantly impacted your work as a photographer. It sounds like this car accident. You obviously had seen this lab in town because it was close to where you lived, right? Or this building, or was it something that just...
I didn't even know what it was. It had this big giant sign, said U Develop. And I'm like, I wonder what that's about. I didn't actually even know about it until after my car wreck.
It's interesting, Alannah, both you and I have surely had this experience because of the number of years we've been blessed to be on this planet. But oftentimes things that seem like a tragedy actually open the door to opportunity.
100%.
And, I think for me, wisdom comes from being able to look at something that's happening and going, okay, where's the good in this? Mm-hmm. I've come to believe that everything happens for a reason. Now, whether there's an intent behind that or just this thing happens and then other opportunities open just as a result, I don't know. It doesn't matter. So all of this success started happening to you as a result of not having a car.
Yeah.
And then when people started recognizing you for it, up comes this, would you call that imposter syndrome or insecurity? What would you call it?
I call it both of those things. Yeah. It was amazing and really scary. And I think a lot of us have grown up with criticism. I would say in my case, there was a lot of humiliation that I experienced in my life, like at school and stuff, and also with my stepfather, who's could be really cruel. And I was just really this pretty tender-hearted little being. I think most of us are when we're little kids. And so I think I just had a wound point. I had a real easy access to feeling like I was going to be criticized or humiliated or just let somebody down. But I will say what happened, the seed that got planted in that lab, two things happened. When I was doing the photography, when I was at that music, I loved the music so much. And so, like we have scent, we have smell, we have touch, we have all our senses. And the more senses that are being activated at one time, the more powerful and potent an experience is. And I would say because of the nature of being in there's music, we're in this bar. I didn't drink or anything. I just wanted to be there for the music. And on my visual, I'm getting visually stimulated. So I'm like having these experiences of taking these photographs and then being in the lab. I was like an alchemist. Like I would be there until I was out of paper. And they were like, you have to go. We're closed. And it happened a lot. But that creative force that seed got planted, and that ability to have your own point of view. And for me at that time, it was a visual point of view. It was powerful. And so that really, even though I kind of quit for a little bit because I had to make money, I gave myself a very responsible reason for why I needed to quit. I had a little boy at that time. I had a baby when I was 17. And I was single, and it was just he and I. And I realized I couldn't make the money I needed to make to support us doing that at that time. So I think it was a combination of being afraid and justifying it from a responsible point of view. And that is a pattern that's so shown up in my life throughout the years. Definitely.
It's amazing how that criticism and humility, for anyone that's listening, it's amazing how when that is part of our life, part of the programming that we get, how pervasive that is as we age. It continues to rear its nerdy head.
Absolutely.
And mess with us, right?
Powerful.
So, for a minute, let's just talk about how do we combat that voice? How do we combat that sense of people are going to know that I don't know what I'm doing and somebody's going to humiliate me, which is really, for me, I don't know about you, but for me, it's really nothing more than something that stuck from when I was a kid, and amazing accomplishments that I've had in my life. Tremendous things. That voice still can be the loudest one in my head.
Yeah.
And it's work to shut it up.
Yeah. I have a lot of ideas and points of view about that, actually. I think to answer your initial question, I think one of the ways we combat that is, first of all, awareness. And we have to want to not have that suffering and see it as suffering and see it, our ego always wants to, kind of move to the forefront, again, my point of view, and keep us safe in a way that sometimes actually creates some friction in our life and our relationships. Because it doesn't really, my experience with ego is it doesn't want to be vulnerable. That's a form of weakness or it's not safe. But I think when we are willing, first of all, when we see that our responses in our life, the way we're showing up is having, for me, I would say, a negative impact for my children or how I'm parenting, or it's affecting my relationships or the people that I love. It was really easy for me to go, I need to stop and look at this, like what's really happening. I'm going to be really, really honest and say that I still manage my fear all the time, even after 20 years of being a photographer, because I did become a professional photographer. My last round was primarily taking portraits of visionaries and game changers and people that were doing really incredible things in the world, which I just decided I wanted to have those people as my friends. So what better way to have, first it was the musicians, and now I just wanted to know these people. Part of it's caring about somebody more than you care about yourself in the healthy way. Right? Not being so self-consumed and self-oriented that you get stuck. But I also think that what happens, there's a couple things. Remember that most of these experiences that we have that are our anchor points, as far as imprints that sort of affect the direction of our life or emotional well-being. If something happens when we're 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, and it's our first experience, so it's novel and it's a negative experience, that's a deep, deep imprint. And that's also, we're young, so it's a big deal. If mean things happen and we've been on the planet 40 or 50 years, it's one mean thing usually. So I think that can lay a foundation. And then what happens is there's this referential thing that happens. And so we're always I'm going to be wrong. Somebody's going to be mad at me, whatever. I think it was my 4th or 5th birthday. I got 3 sorry games because I said sorry so much. I was a walking apology. I would be in the store and someone was upset and I would apologize. I apologized for everything. And I'm still managing that experience of apologizing just for showing up. So I've had to going back to the awareness, then it's taking action. Who do I want to be? I had a therapist once just look at me straight in the eye after me talking about all the reasons why something was happening and how sad I was about this. My husband at the time was mean or not caring or whatever. And she just looked at me and said, who do you want to be? Alannah, who do you want to be? And it just rocked my world at that time because I realized I don't want to be a victim. I don't want to be a whiner. I don't want to be a suffering woman. I don't want to be an excuse maker. I want to be this amazing force in people's lives. And I want to be an amazing mother and I want to have fun and I want to be a creative. And it's if I'm stuck in this story and all this BS about all these things that happened to me or what it means, then I don't get to be that person. And then I would say one more thing that really impacted me. We've all heard it. It is what someone thinks about you is none of your business.
Love that. Yeah.
I still remind myself of that in those times when I start to have a little bit of fear about showing up, or I start to feel like I don't belong somewhere, or I'm an imposter. We started to talk about imposter syndrome. It's been one of those anchor mantras for me. It's this isn't about me. I want to take this personally, but this is not about me. So yeah, that's my answer to that.
That's great. Thank you for going into that. And you dropped an awful lot of wisdom around how to manage those thoughts and those mindsets. That's really, really useful. And it made me think that you and I have a lot of things in common.
Yes.
As I've discovered in the time that we've known each other. And I tend to break certain rules and really stringently follow other ones. And I'm thinking that some of that comes from the frustration of always being afraid to be wrong. So I'm going to toe the line. But then over here, it's well, let's do it anyway.
Yeah.
And I see that with the bar thing when you went into the photography. But so let's talk a little bit about this rule breaker that's in you.
Yeah.
Obviously, you broke the rules. Well, I don't know if that was really a rule breaking. That was, to me, that was not breaking the rules. That was problem solving. Yeah, absolutely. But have you become a rule breaker in your life? And has that been something that served you in your career? Yeah. Or you said, yeah, this is the way it's always been done, but
100%. Actually, it has defined much of my career. And there's this thing about asking permission as well, which is a core part of Mother Lover CEO's permission. But I actually don't have that part of me where I'm a rule breaker in some areas and I follow rules in another area. I'm getting a little bit better about being respectful, like making sure I'm not breaking a rule just to break it. There's been a little bit of that rebelliousness. My experience is that I see so many people bound by rules, either the rules they've put on themselves or rules in their family, rules in society, at the expense of their own happiness and their own expression, their own ability to step up and be fully authentic because they don't think they're allowed to be that person. So if we fast forward a little bit into my photography career, honestly, I mean, this is just so funny to me. And I really hope that people can relate to this. But like I said, I actually got C's and D's in photography in school. I did take photography in school and I just didn't do the assignments, or I did what I wanted and I got terrible grades. But I was afraid, like flash scared me. I was afraid I couldn't figure out the technical part of the flash. So I became this phenomenal natural light photographer because somehow I thought it was easier to do that than just, read a manual and figure out how your flash worked. And then I didn't like to carry gear. I didn't like to have too many things. I didn't like the feeling of like walking around with all this stuff. I also didn't want anyone to watch me do photography. So I never wanted assistance because I felt too nervous and self-conscious. And I also noticed that I fell in love with all of my images. And so I didn't like to shoot too much because I had a hard time throwing them away because you don't ever give everyone all the images, right?
Right.
And I also, to add to the mix of that, and when I first started, I was a single mom, eternally broke at the time. That was my mindset. And I literally knew how much each frame cost me. So got very discerning in my choosing the shot, and it was one of those gifts. It was because I didn't have the money to buy a lot of film and I couldn't blow film, but really it made me a much better photographer. And so what happened was you take all of those things together and I ended up kind of getting known for doing these 7-minute portrait sessions. And the people that I was wanting to photograph valued their time and they weren't available a lot and they were very busy. So it ended up working out beautifully. Also, no one thinks you're going to do anything in 7 minutes, right? And I ended up kind of over the years honing this I would sit and talk with somebody for 5 to 10 minutes, just connect with them and see them, get them comfortable. And I would, in that process, if I have a superpower in this, I would say it's literally about seeing the spark of soul essence. I'm really good at that. And I'll start to talk with somebody and it's like their spirit talks to me. And then I see who they are. And then I would shoot for 7 minutes, but usually I would have the first 10 frames. I would get the shot that I wanted. And then I would develop it. Even when I went to digital, I never worked in Photoshop or anything. I always did all of my processing as if I was in the darkroom. I do contrast and, color balancing in the ways that I could do in the darkroom. And I got known for that, and also one other thing is most portraits are taken with a 50 millimeter lens. Well, I happen to think a 50 millimeter lens for a portrait's a mean thing to do because it distorts the face from my point of view. And I love to zoom in I just wanted to connect. So I would focus on their eyes and I would use a long lens, breaking all of the rules. And then their face would just get a little bit soft. But what would happen is the primary focus of the image was their eyes. And it was very subtle. And they were my images are very, very similar. But I'm telling you what, the number of people to this day that tell me my favorite portrait I've ever taken, I've never seen myself look like that, or I fell in love with myself when I saw that photograph. It's amazing to me. Because that's, to me, I wanted people to feel seen. And I felt like, delusional or not, I felt like I could see their soul. I felt like I could see their essence. And all I wanted was for them to see it too.
Will you still travel to go do shots for people? Is that something you're still willing to do?
I went on sabbatical about 7 years ago. Sabbatical, like I quit, but I called it sabbatical because I knew that I wanted to come back. And I haven't been shooting for quite some time, but the Mother Lover CEO project that was the inspiration and its original inception to want to come back and start doing photographs. And I still feel nervous every single time I pick up my camera, like I'm not going to know what to do or how to do it. Every time.
There's something powerful about that nervousness, I think, because I still feel that way when I go on stage. And I've done, I don't know, over 100 shows now.
Amazing.
But you know what? I fall right into the groove, right? Once I'm out there, that experience takes over it. I think about it like when I used to have my sons train for karate.
Yeah.
And they would have to do, they're called katas maybe? I forget what they're called. But it's been so long since I trained, I don't even remember myself. They were like, Dad, I'm sick of doing these things. But it becomes natural. So shifting away from me going down a bunny trail with that description, I want to ask, what advice would you give to someone about how to take risks in their career? I love the fact that you developed your style and your approach because there was things you didn't want to do.
Yeah, I was afraid, or I didn't want to make a mistake, or I was avoiding something. Yeah, it's incredible.
What kind of advice would you give to somebody about how to take risks in their life, in their career, in their relationships? Like, is there something that stands out for you?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes back to a little bit what we talked about. I did a TEDx talk, and the title of that was "Everything's Made Up." So make your own way. And I had this experience once where I was really kind of having an introspective, sort of deep connection with like, why do we do these things? Like, where do words even come from? Who decided it's spelled that way? I studied linguistics in college because I was fascinated about language and meaning. And it's like, who says that this is the right way to do something and this is the wrong way? Knowledge had to start somewhere. That belief had to start somewhere. And then it's a whole bunch of people decided that they were going to go along with it. Why? And I think because so many of the good things in my life and my career happened as a result of me not knowing any better. I was also a very young mom. My mother was an incredibly good mom as far as loving me. There were some other challenges. She had her own naivety and innocence and things that she wasn't great at, as far as like maybe keeping me safe. But as far as feeling loved, always loved, that was there. And so I got I know how to love part. But I also came with a really big chip on my shoulder because I was 17 and everyone thinks you're a teenage mother. I was on welfare. I fit this stereotype. And I felt the pressure of people seeing me a certain way that I didn't necessarily see myself that way. And how this ties into your question about like breaking the rules or, how to go through your career. I feel like what it boils down to is authenticity. I'm going to say that a lot because I just really feel like it is absolute liberation. We give ourselves permission to truly stand up for ourselves, to love ourselves, to be true to ourselves. And it's hard with the pressure of family, the pressure of society, the pressure of like the right way to do things. But if our commitment is to our joy, to having a happy heart, knowing that that's contagious. When we are honoring ourselves, we give other people permission to honor themselves. And that is a ripple effect of epic proportion. And it's a gift we give to our children because that isn't a lesson you teach. That is something that you witness. And the advice really to question, why is it done this way? Who says this is the right way? I mean, I would fail any photography class even now. I would fail. I don't do anything the way I'm supposed to do it. But innovation, all the beautiful, amazing things that have happened in creativity and music and science throughout the world have been, and history, have been mistakes made in labs, have been somebody coming outside of science with an idea that changed science. The best, most amazing things on this planet have resulted from mistakes and somebody taking a risk to try something different. And I get goosebumps when I talk about it like that, because I feel like if we could all be showing up more like that, the world would be a totally different place.
Okay, so the fear though, like what does somebody do with the fear? The fear is in the way of all that authenticity. The fear is in the way of all that, innovation. Like, how do you manage the fear?
That's such a good question, Tony. And I think that we kind of all have a different relationship with fear. I think for me, I've had a life that I designed up at the soul script table is what I call it. We're all sitting around the soul script table. Like, what are we going to sign up for? And who's going to sign up to be on my team? Who's going to be the bad guy in my life, right? They're like, I love you so much, I'm going to be the bad guy. And the first thing I would say is really recognizing our relationship with fear. Like, why is it there? What does it actually mean? It does usually boil down to safety, but then like what? Is it humiliation? Is it being criticized? Is it loss of love? Some of us come from families where if you had a baby at 17, you'd be disowned. I didn't come from that family, so I had that benefit. But I feel like what's happened for me is I just had things happen in my life where I didn't have a choice. It was do or die. I would love it if people did not have to have do or die circumstances in their life to make that jump. I could do it for my children. Like, who do I want to be as a mother? In order for me to be this mother, that means I have to overcome this thing. I mean, you have children. Have you ever woken up with your 1-year-old or 2-year-old or your 5-year-old or whatever when you get to the teenage years, this might be the case. But when the babies are the babies and they're young, you never wake up and be like, am I going to be accepted by my child?
No.
You're going to criticize me? Like, right? Like, you don't have any of that. Your whole point is love. How do I love and protect? So again, I think it's stepping outside of being, I lovingly say this, being a narcissist, being the center of your world so that everything revolves around you, and get into love for somebody else. That seems to me always to be the cure to fear.
That's so powerful. And I believe that many times this fear is really just self-centeredness, masquerading.
It is.
Masquerading as something else. Because people tend to be like sympathetic to you if you go, oh, well, I'm afraid. Yeah, I understand. It's hard. But if they said selfish, I'm narcissistic, nobody's going to be like, well, that's good, right? So, and you said authenticity. Yeah. Like, really, it comes down to who do I authentically choose to be? Mm-hmm. Like, who do I want to be? Who do I get to be? And focusing on that is, I think, so powerful as a motivator, as to get you into action.
100%. So, we've gotten really sophisticated in our scientific devices so we can actually measure emotions. And I wish I'm going to make up some stuff right now so people have to check it, but you can check it. And so you can measure how much, what the frequency of love is and how far it emanates from a person's body, how it's felt. And there was some recent study that was done where authenticity was measured. And authenticity is defined as believing what you say, saying a thing and believing what you say. So you're actually in accordance with yourself. You believe a thing and you say that thing and you actually are in integrity with it. I did not articulate that very well. At any rate, authenticity is more powerful than just the frequency of love. It's that, because when we are walking around in authenticity, when we are walking around completely aligned with ourselves, fearless of our truth, and we say that truth and it's complete alignment. There is no lie there. Even sometimes we lie, we don't even know we're lying. We say things, we believe things we don't even believe. We don't even know we believe it. So it's getting into that place where you are so unapologetically yourself and you love people so much, you're unwilling to become someone that you're not to appease them. That's safety. Think about, again, I'm going to go back to having children. Your children need this safe container, and that safe container comes from knowing their boundaries, knowing that you're going to show up as your true self every day and be the same parent you were yesterday. You don't change your ideas. You don't change your beliefs. You don't change the rules. You don't change the boundaries. You don't decide you love them one day and don't love them another day. So again, I think it's just that commitment. For me, it's like, I want to have a happy heart. When I work with my clients, it's like, how do you get to have a happy heart? And it's just a simple way to say, how do we get you to be who you want to be and not have to apologize for it? Yeah,
that's great. So is that how you maintain authenticity in your business and still appeal to
Oh, yeah, that's a good question too. How do you not alienate people? I don't think I'm not the only one. There's a lot of people that I respect that have a similar opinion, which is if you appeal to everybody, you appeal to nobody. Not everyone's going to agree with you. Not everyone's going to like you. Not everyone's going to want to be on your team. And that's okay. I'm a very, very firm believer. Again, that safety thing I just talked about, that trust comes, we've gotten so sophisticated in our radars when somebody, the sales thing and the marketing thing, and there's patterns and ways of doing things. And people already start to brace up and become defensive in a situation because you're going to ask for money or you're going to ask for this, or we just know intuitively. I think when we show up unapologetically as ourselves and we're okay with somebody not liking us, we are creating trust. Even with the people who don't like us. They're like, well, at least they're standing their ground. At least they are not cowering down. And then that trust creates safety. And people want to hang out where there's safety. And they want to know they're going to be accepted. And they want to know they're going to be accepted even if they have a different idea or a belief system. So I don't know if I totally answered your question. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I think you totally answered the question. I feel the same way, even with people that I disagree with. If they're standing their ground and they're doing it in a way that is authentic rather than just being combative or sensationalistic, right? Then I respect them. In fact, there have been people who I previously judged because of what they were saying, what they were doing. And then when I really started listening to them, seeing that they were consistent and then started sharing the deeper reasons for why they believed what they believed, my attitude towards them shifted.
Yeah.
It was like, you know what? I respect this person for standing for what they believe in. And although my life experience has been different, we can be.
I mean, it goes back to that permission thing. I'm giving myself permission to be me, which means I give you permission to be you. We have a mentor in common, Shanda Sumter. I don't align with everything that Shanda thinks and everything that she talks about from stage. But I love that woman so much for her conviction and her willingness to stand her ground and say, this is my belief. I'll love you either way, but this is what I believe. And this is why. I think she has a heart as big as any person I've ever met. And it doesn't matter if we agree on everything. It doesn't matter if she would disagree with some of my own beliefs. I have so much respect for her. And I know that her heart is there. She's in authenticity. She's compelling and she's provocative and she pushes buttons and she's going to make you mad, but she's also going to make you feel like you are safe there. I've witnessed her give people permission to go and do their truth when they didn't before. And what a gift. I want to be able to be, I mean, it's inspiring enough to me where it reminds me, yep, I just have to be in that authentic self. And it's that unapologetic love for our own self.
So I mentioned a minute ago about how I shifted over and over again. My beliefs have shifted, but is there like a personal belief or a rule that maybe you used to hold or used to believe that you shifted from, you questioned, and it changed your life?
God, that's such a good question. Something just popped in my mind, and it's kind of not exactly what maybe you were looking for, but I went through a phase. I used to struggle with depression throughout my life, to varying degrees of severity. I don't know, 15 years ago, I was in a very, very, very deep, deep, deep depression to where I just kind of didn't want to be on the planet anymore. And, but I had this belief that I had this responsibility to my children. And I had signed up for the belief that says, if you take yourself out, you're selfish. And that created a lot of cognitive dissonance for me because I felt like I was anything but a selfish person. And I didn't want to be selfish. But I also felt like I wasn't, at that time, I did not see the value of myself or my children, right? I do have an ability to almost disconnect from myself, disassociate and show up. And I would show up and I would do the breakfast and I would do the things. I wasn't being authentic, but I was showing up and I was for my kids and we get them to school. We do the homework and we do the things. The minute they were out the door, I was a puddle. And so I had made arrangements to, at that time, a lot of things were happening financially. I'd had taken a big bet on real estate and things had crumbled. And I had went with reckless abandon because I have a very very high tolerance of risk and things had not gone well. And then I started having this sickness where I thought I was getting early onset Alzheimer's. And then I thought it was MS. And then I was going to India for treatment and kind of given myself this plan where if I couldn't get better in India, I might not come back. Maybe I would have a tragedy. I wouldn't ever kill myself because that wouldn't be okay, but I would find a way where I would die. And so I had 4 or 5 weeks before I was going, and I was going to be gone for 6 weeks. Something happened in that 6 weeks. It was probably one of the most beautiful, soul confirming experiences of my life as I gave up. I surrendered. And I stopped doing all this. This is the answer to your question. I stopped doing all the rules about parenting, bedtimes, brushing teeth here, brushing teeth there, homework here, homework there. My relationship with my children stopped being around the rules and regulations of being a good mom in society's eyes. And my idea, which is like, what if I didn't get any more time with my kids? I would only care about spending time with my kids. I wouldn't care about if they had ice cream before dinner. I wouldn't freaking care if they did their homework. I wouldn't care what time they went to bed. I would care about getting every morsel, every moment, every experience with those babies that I could possibly get. And something shifted. And I was like, I shifted as my relationship with my children shifted. My relationship with my life shifted. My relationship with God shifted. My relationship with my own self. I also got this idea that my children were a gift to me. They were given to me as a gift, and my job was to love them, not to give them and like keep them safe and give them ideas, give them guide rails, hopefully giving them a place where they could always come home and seek safety. But like, they weren't mine. And I can't explain to you. I've never been the same. Lo and behold, I did go to India. Lo and behold, I came back. But that relationship with my children never changed. And it was the most powerful shifts in my perspective of parenting and my job that I've had in my whole life.
Wow. That's incredible. And so thinking about shifts and powerful things, your Mother Lover CEO project, this is deeply personal. Can you talk a little bit about how that came to be?
Yeah. So the prologue of that program was me coming back to photography. I had kind of done my own little retrospective of my images over time, and sort of like, I started out as doing music, and then I did some fashion, and then I worked with artists, and then I did weddings, high-end weddings. It was a social experiment. It was great. I was in school at the time. It was getting a psych degree. I'll talk about that later because it's really fascinating. But, and then I decided I wanted to do brand development. So it sort of evolved over time. But my last, I'm going to say, opus of work was, like I said, working with these visionaries and these game changer people. And I realized that all of the images I loved the most were men, that the people I admired the most were men. The rooms I wanted to be in were with men. And I was really questioning that, because I wouldn't call myself a traditional feminist, but I definitely am not apologetic for being a woman, right? Like, otherwise I couldn't be a mom. That's how I really feel. But I realized that, my 5th birthday, I don't know how I got this in my head. I have no idea where it came from. I thought I was going to wake up a boy. I literally thought I got to be a boy when I turned 5. Is that the craziest thing?
Wow.
So I obviously had some programming. My father was absent from my life, and my stepfather it was pretty rough. I'd always wanted a dad and a family, and it just didn't work out how my imagination had it set up for me. And so I obviously was missing that sense of acknowledgement. And like I said, my mom was incredibly loving, and she definitely made me feel like I was important. But I do think there's something that happens we get something for both parents. And it was being very clear to me that I wasn't good enough, that I was seeking male approval, that I somehow thought I'd be more valuable if I was a man or somebody would want to, and that had a lot of impact on me. And I raised boys. Like, I had 3 boys, like I love that job. I love that job of raising 3 boys. And then I'm an entrepreneur, and I did a lot of masterminds and a lot of groups where I started to seeing these incredible women in these rooms doing amazing things, changing industries. And so I got this idea. My new project was going to be getting in contact with all of these women that were, had 7, 8, and 9-figure businesses, and they'd done these amazing things in the world, and everyone knew who they were. And I had this idea that I was going to take these photographs in these different elements, right? Like who they were in their raw essence self. Like, no makeup, no, like straight out of the shower. Like, who was this person without any persona in their essence? And then this aspect of they have children and they have to be this mom. And this powerhouse over here is still waking up and wiping snot and changing dirty diapers, or, getting told that they were hated by their teenager for, like, they all have that experience. And I wanted to capture the experience of them as their mother and with their relationship with their partner. And then I wanted to capture these portraits of them in their role as visionary. And I wanted to be a big coffee table book, and I had all these ideas of these portraits. And then I wanted to do a documentary, and then I wanted to do a big gallery show. It was a big production of this big thing I wanted to create. And so I wanted to see if it was interesting to people. And I would talk about it with my women friends and people that were entrepreneurs or also mothers, lovers, and CEOs, leaders in their life. And almost without exception, they're like, oh man, that's amazing. I wish I could have that. I wish I would love to be part of it. I would love to be famous enough for you to want to basically take my photograph and do this interview. And I was like, my gosh, I was like a little brokenhearted actually. And it was like kind of a little bit of a punch in the face, honestly, that I missed. Like I was even disregarding myself because I fit in that category. And then I just fell in love with this idea of creating this space where I could do that work with just all the women who felt like they were fit in that category. They wanted to be connected to that, but also a place to be nourished, because these women are doing all of these things with absolute devotion, and it can be exhausting. And one of the things is we lose ourselves. We lose ourselves in who we are other than a mother and a partner, and finding room to do something that also is about just us as a human being, having a purpose that may not only be about our children and our partners. And so it's about being seen and witnessed. It's about support in your future and becoming all you want to be. And it's about being nourished and in community, in a safe space where you can collaborate and work together, and also just be in good company. So
sounds really powerful. Like what kind of impact are you hoping that's going to have on not only your audience, but in, a broader level?
Obviously, I was creating something. What it came very clear to me is that I was creating the thing that I wish I could experience for myself.
Wow.
And I think that what happens is when we, again, same theme, giving ourselves permission to be seen and totally show up unapologetically and being in authenticity. When we as women, and I think men too, the one thing I do want to qualify, I want to say is so much of the stuff that I see in the world where women are sort of feeling empowered or moving into some sort of potency is there's always a little bit of this backlash against men or against, the patriarchy. That's not my gig. My gig is I don't want to fight against something. I want to be for something. And when I feel like when women get to be valued, first of all, for the mother thing and the partner thing, but they also get permission to like really have their own sense of purpose in the world, that ripple effect, that again, that word, that potency of somebody redefining industries and doing something in the world, that it really, the ripple effect of that love and that permission and that unapologetic way of standing up and being in our authenticity, I actually believe it will change the world. It'll change business. It'll change families. It'll change men. It will change relationships. It'll change when children are witnessing this with their parents, and then they get to see the relationship, their mother and their father, or however their family dynamic is. It's the invisible magic that I believe does change the world. It fills it with kindness and compassion and acceptance. Judgment falls by the wayside. I mean, and again, that's not my job. My job is just to show up and love some people, give them a safe container and see them and witness them, and then they go along their way. That ripple effect is contagious. And then, of course, the beauty and freedom. My tenets, right? Goodness, beauty, and freedom are the things that I stand for. I actually believe that beauty is like the frequency of love. And that was one of the things I will say with my portraits is people will look at them and just think this person is so beautiful. And it doesn't actually matter what they look like. They feel the essence of that person. And I feel like that's a secret elixir to an amazing world.
That's phenomenal. I want to ask you a question that just came up for me, and I see where your love is, where your passion is, where your energy is. What is something that breaks your heart?
I would say it's the flip side of that. And I get my heart broken a lot by witnessing people be so afraid. Number one, they don't think they matter. They don't think anyone really cares. They don't really have anything to bring to the world. It doesn't have to be some big project in the global platform, right? It's literally how you show up and spread your kindness. So I feel like people not feeling like they matter, and also people living a life that is so out of accordance with their heart and their soul, no matter what it looks like on paper, no matter how much money they make, what house they live in, or where they travel to. They are so disconnected to their sense of self or what their heart truly desires that they have no fulfillment. And I've coached a lot of those people. They've checked all the boxes. They've done all the things, and they're like, I'm not happy. And they feel guilty about it. They feel guilty. They feel like they're a bad person. They have great kids. They have a great partner. They've had an amazing business, and they aren't happy, and it makes them feel like a bad person. And like I'm just having these images, and I'm just feeling in my heart right now, like the number of people that just don't even feel like they have a right to have what they want. And they don't, and they feel invisible. A lot of people just feel invisible. I see we have a world of broken-hearted people walking around, Tony. They do. And it's unnecessary. We've got to up our game with compassion. We've got to up our game with acceptance. We've got to release the judgment that we have for ourselves and the people in life based on their politics or based on their belief systems with God or not God. Like, that's not our business. We have one job: to love ourselves and love others. That's how I see it.
Well, it sounds like your Mother Lover CEO project is something that'll make a tremendous impact in lessening some of that misery that so many people are feeling, that sense of not mattering and invisibility, and that it will have a ripple effect. Even though the target is obviously women, the lives that are touched by those people extend to, men. It's unlimited. So what do you see? Like, what are your aspirations for this next phase of your life? Is there anything else that you haven't shared with me that you see as going into this next phase, the vision for the life you're creating?
Yes, definitely more fun for myself and others. So part of that Mother Lover CEO experience, I was a hyper responsible little being. And sometimes when you're hyper responsible, there's a seriousness that happens. And I'm always wanting to have more fun, but I have to do my work first. You know what I mean? I'm still wired for that. So I would definitely say I want there to be more fun and more joy. And I want to create. So I really love creating space. When I was rehabbing houses, it was creating a beautiful space and giving this home a new lease on life, really. When at my shop, it's a beautiful space where people get to come in and they get to vibe out. And so I have a love affair with Italy. I have for a long, long time. I have an imagination to own a villa or a group of villas that becomes a retreat center for rejuvenation and longevity. One of the projects that I started before I opened my shop, and then I just kind of put on the wayside, it was something called Pristine Body, which was based on really wanting to stay young and beautiful and youthful and alive and having vitality without lots of cutting or maybe, doing some of the other things that are pretty mainstream. And I want to create a retreat center where Mother Lover CEO fits there. And also anyone wanting to come to express their creativity, like they want to write a book, so they want to come and stay for 30 days or 90 days. They have a project they want to do, and they want to have a place where they have a studio where they can come and do all the recordings and video and or audio, or where they want to come and literally just get a reboot. And they come and they get all of the latest technology that's non-invasive and all this amazing gourmet food that's specifically customized for them. And it's in a place of beauty, filled with music and art and flowers and literally if you could design like a magical experience that you didn't think existed, I want that. I want to create the place of that, a big giant retreat center where you get to come and basically plug in and feed your soul.
Wow. That's awesome. You mentioned earlier that, and we're running out of time, unfortunately, but you mentioned earlier this social experiment that you did with the weddings, a psychological thing, and I would love you to tell me about that.
Yeah. And so this is a little out of, over on the side, but it did impact my understanding two powerful things. It helped me with mindset, really, truly understand mindset. And it helped me understand people. So I was in school at the time. I went to college forever. I just got many degrees because I love learning, and it's something you can arrange your schedule around kids.
Right.
And I was a photographer at the time, and I was getting a degree in organizational development, and I got another degree in psychology. And then I also studied international education, power dynamics. And so it was really fascinating to me. Why do people do the things that they do? And so I'm like, well, I need some money. And I would never, at that point, my relationship with money was impoverished, I would say, seeing my value or what I could charge for things, but an experiment I could do. So I built a website as a high-end wedding photographer with astronomical prices. At that time, it was just prices I would have never, $10,000 to shoot a wedding. This is quite some time ago. And I was curious. So I had $5,000 to $10,000. And so this is what happened. There were people that would come in for $2,500, and they just needed photographs. They just wanted their day documented. And then there was the people that were in the $5,000 to $7,000 range. And then there was the people 10,000 and above. The people on the $10,000 and above really had a sense of, I value you as an artist. I didn't do shot lists. I wouldn't do that. I was a photojournalist. I captured the experience. And they loved that. They wanted something new. They wanted something different. They loved the artsy photojournalistic quality of it. And I got so much respect. The side effect of that also is they had a lot of money to spend on their wedding. Gorgeous cakes and beautiful grounds and beautiful flowers. So it made my job so easy.
Yeah.
And then I would create my interpretation of their experience in a book that was like a piece of art. And they loved that. The mid-range people, they wanted me to do a shot list. They wanted to control everything. They couldn't quite get the $10,000 mindset. And they had escaped the $2,500 or $3,000 mindset. And they were in this space of control and not quite good enough. The worst weddings, the worst experiences. If I was going to, I loved my people, but they were always the most challenging. And then these people here, they were just gracious. They were just happy to have you there. But it wasn't as fun for me because they were more modest. And so there wasn't always as much extravagance and beauty for me to be able to take photographs of. But it really helped me understand that mindset experience. Made me understand, number one, we're just all people. And nobody, whether you have $10,000 or whether you have $2,000 to spend on your wedding for photography, it's just as important to you. There's not like a betterness there. That was important. But it was just this mindset thing of value. And it really gave me permission to start charging higher prices because it gave me more freedom. And I got more appreciated. And I got more appreciated because those people also value themselves in a different kind of way. So that really impacted me dramatically in how I showed up in a lot of different areas of my life.
Wow, that's super powerful.
One thing I will just say, because when I was in film school, I have a film degree as well. I had a professor who had a PhD in rhetoric from Berkeley. And he was also a scriptwriter. And one thing that he said, again, it's one of those pivotal times, like something just hits you and it stays with you for the rest of your life. It was screenwriting class and it was a master's class. So it was a small group and he's doing his, he was an eccentric guy, but he's doing his talk. And I still say this, he goes, everyone's 5 years old on the playground. Everyone is 5 years old on the playground. And so we were doing character development at that time, right? But that has stayed with me. So I've worked with a lot of people that can be quite intimidating, what they've accomplished in the rooms that they're in. And when I'm there with them, I'm like, they're just 5 years old on the playground. They have the same hurts, the same fears, the same insecurities, the same brokenheartedness. They still get stuck on the toilet sometimes, or they eat something bad and they throw up, or they get embarrassed. I actually believed when I was a little girl that you got to a certain age and you were never embarrassed again. And like that has given me, it's anchored compassion for me. It's given me a sense of compassion that everyone, again, I'm going to go back to what I said before. They just want to be seen. They want to feel safe. They want to feel like they matter. Everybody. And so we're all the same.
I love that. That's powerful. So Alannah, I want you to tell us where people can go find out about you. If they can go to your website, Mother Lover CEO, to find out about this project. And I also want to know if there's anything I didn't ask you that you wish I would have.
Oh, I love that question. No, you were a really good question asker, Tony. This has been really, really fun for me. Of course, I have, 100 more stories, but it's like, I feel like you did such a beautiful job of excavating me and hopefully bring some value to the table for others as well. As far as finding me right now, for sure, you can see me on Alannah Vision. That's just sort of my legacy portrait site. A lot of amazing people there. I intentionally don't list anybody's name because I want everyone just to stand for themselves. Some of them are famous and some of them aren't, but I bet you can't tell who's who most of the time unless you know who they are. That's alannahvision.com. And then I am in the process. I do have a motherloverceo.com site, and it is in the process of getting rebuilt. So that will be up and live soon. If it's not right now, it will be.
Fantastic. And for those of you that are listening or watching and you have the ability to, I will link those websites below. So, Alannah, the last question I have for you is, who do you want to be a hero to?
Oh, good question. It might sound a little cliche, but first of all, my children, ultimately.
Absolutely.
They keep me wanting to be a better version of myself, and they challenge me in all the ways to help me. but really like kind of the brokenhearted and disenfranchised, mostly because I hope I stand in some way, shape, or form, in whatever capacity we connect with, feeling like they'd matter and they have something to offer. And no matter how brokenhearted they may feel, that they've got something to contribute. Yeah. And of course, who doesn't want to be an inspiration to our mentors and our heroes and the people that we admire? But ultimately, I love being behind stage more than I love being on stage. Do I want to write books and do I want to write scripts? Yes, I have these amazing scripts in mind and I have books I want to write, and I want to take amazing photographs and do amazing art gallery exhibitions. And I want to do all of that. But I would also be totally fine being in the room and no one knowing who I am. I just want to witness people. And yeah, I just get the goosebumps about it, actually. I just want to witness people having an amazing experience, being happy, being changed. That's it.
Where's your shop right now? You have if people wanted to actually come visit you, is that something you want to disclose where it's at?
Sure. Right now, I'm in Albuquerque, New Mexico, the home of the Bloomstone, which is my shop, and Netflix, and a whole bunch of actually big businesses, believe it or not. And I'm right downtown on 2nd Street, and the Bloomstone.
Love it. Yeah. Alannah, you are a true leader. You have a beautiful heart and you have so much wisdom. I thank you so much for spending this time with me today. Thank you again for being part of the show.
Thanks for having me. It was so fun and I adore you so much. What you're doing is amazing.
You too. And you're going to continue to change lives. I appreciate you. So thanks so much. Thank you for tuning into Hero Up. I hope today's episode challenged you to step up as a hero in your field and provided you with valuable insights to express your unique voice and message. If you found this episode helpful and motivating, please leave a review and share it with your friends and family. And remember to subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes and amazing guests. Until next time, find your voice, share your message, live your mission.